All right, so welcome to the North Central U.S. Climate and Drought Outlook for April. This will be my last webinar as well. I'll be co-leading this in the future, but this will be my last one as a NOAA person, NOAA employee, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I will be going into, I'll call it semi-retirement at the end of this month. Nonetheless, our plan is to continue doing these with Dennis and all of our great partners that you can see listed here on Dennis's first slide. So it's not goodbye. It's just letting you know that. And I'm going to try to transition all the names that are, all the folks that are currently getting this will continue to get this webinar link. Some of you are on my personal email or my NOAA email, and some of you aren't. Nonetheless, we'll try to communicate any changes, which there shouldn't be, at least for the foreseeable future, for the webinar in general. So if you get on the webinar, you're already linked in, or you're already signed in for the rest of the year, as far as I'm concerned. If that changes, we'll have to take some, we'll have to do something about that. Anyway, as we usually do, we don't take, we'll take questions as we go along, and you can put your questions in the question box there, interface. We don't usually monitor the chat much, so anything you want to comment on or ask questions, we'll get to those at the end. Our speaker today is Dr. Dennis Toddy. He's the director of the USDA Midwest Climate Hub and my partner often on these things. And I think that's all I have to say at this time. Oh, yeah, so there will be questions about where this recording and PDF will be. So it takes about 24 hours for us to get it online somewhere. Often we put it on YouTube, and there's a URL and all that stuff that I get. So the regional climate centers who usually host these are currently offline, but what I'm going to encourage you to do is to write me or Dennis, because we'll have either the PDF if you need it, or a link in about 24 hours to the recording. So just, I guess, depend on us, if you will, as best you can. We may have a place by the end of this call, by the way, that we can go, and we'll let you know what that is to get the information. So I guess stand by. A lot of things kind of in the air at the moment. Dennis, I'm going to hang up and not hang up, but I'm going to go mute and let you take over now, and thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And I don't want you to disappear. You've been a great partner and friend on these throughout the years, and I hope we can continue doing them for a long period of time. If you haven't known, Doug and I do enjoy working with each other. So yes, it's time to get ahead with what's going on here. We got a lot going on. Thanks for having me here today, Doug. I do appreciate it. I always enjoy getting a chance to talk and present on this, because there's a lot of things we get a lot of collaboration with partners, and a lot of interesting things that happen we get to talk about as we go along. So again, a reminder of the collaboration of people involved with this. We do plan on having this next month on May 15th with Dr. Justin Glisson, the state climatologist for Iowa, is slated to do this. And then, as Doug said, enter your questions in the Q&A box along the way. So, you know, a usual agenda. Can touch on current conditions, a wide range of impacts. That's why I enjoy doing the spring one, because there's a wide range of things going on this time of year always. And then we'll talk about La Nina and what this can mean for summer. Okay, starting off with kind of a review of conditions, a recap of where we were in March. March temperatures were top 10 warmest over most of the states in the upper Midwest, ranging from, Kansas being number, there'll be 4, and Nebraska being 5, and Iowa, I think, would be number 6 there. The only states that were outside those, the much above average, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Kentucky, but they were still well above average in the way of temperatures overall. In comparison, precipitation, as it tends to be, is kind of all over the place. You see sticking out there Wisconsin and Michigan. Michigan's second wettest on record, and Wisconsin would be number 5. Whereas in contrast, North Dakota was the 10th driest overall for March. And then Minnesota and Iowa were well above average in the way of precipitation, whereas Kansas and Missouri were below. So kind of all over the place, and a mixture of what's going on in the way of precipitation, really due to where the big storm events occurred and where the big storm events did not occur. There were not a ton of storm events, but when they were fairly large overall. And you'll notice along the Ohio Valley, there's nothing that shows up there because that didn't show up until the first week of April. We're going to talk about that as we go along. Going back to the first 3 months of the year, January through March, temperatures, again, largely above average up around the Great Lakes, upper Midwest, though not as warm as we were overall. Much of that had to do with February, where we had a fairly cold period in February, brought the overall totals down. Then surrounding that, the white areas, near average overall. No big extremes that showed up really on this situation. And then the January through March precipitation, you see lots of dry overall. North Dakota, again, was 4th driest. And then, down through the central part of the U.S., on the drier side, not anything astounding, but certainly drier. Whereas, again, Wisconsin and Michigan were above, Kentucky was above, and oddly enough, Wyoming kind of sticking out there on and above overall. So, going on to some nearer term here, last 30 days, precipitation left-hand side, percent of normal on the lower right-hand side. This is where we start picking up this more recent event, the recent wetness period here. So that shows up along the Ohio Valley, in the 12 to 14, 16-inch range over the 30-day period from the mid of March to the middle of April. That runs on the order of 200 to 300% of average, really sticks out comparatively. And that the amounts aren't as extreme up into Wisconsin and Michigan, but still well above average comparatively from a percentage basis. Out to the west, there were a few storm events that brought some scattered precipitation, but generally widespread areas of dry still over the last 30 days, which are having some impacts we'll talk about as we go along here. Departure from normal temperatures over the last 30 days, generally warmer than average on the order of 2 to 4 degrees and kind of this orangish. The yellow is 0 to 2 degrees, and then slightly below average in the far north, where we did have some storm systems that kept snow on the ground, kept them a bit cooler than the rest of the area overall. Okay, let's get this to go here. Okay, now kind of a review of some other recent conditions overall and some of the specific event types of things that impacts, some various spring issues that we have. Severe weather season starting to kick up. On the right-hand side, the preliminary severe storm reports from NOAA's Storm Prediction Center. The red triangles are tornado reports. The blue squares are severe wind reports, and then the green are hail. So March was a bit more active, more widespread. First part of April has generally been more to the east. Several events that have dropped off in the east, and then southern plains. The northern areas really haven't had too much overall. So not too atypical from a storm perspective, though some of the eastern folks did note that they've had more tornadoes, and a really strong start to the tornado season over there. There have been lots of wind issues noted. When we had our review yesterday, several states came up, people commenting how windy it's been. That's the graphic I included here. This is from NCEI, National Center for Environmental Information. The red in the middle is how speed above average. This was the monthly. I grabbed the wrong graphic. This is the average wind speed or mean wind speed at 10 meters, kind of a gridded data set. There was one that was the difference from average. Roughly 1 to 2 meters per second windier than average over most of the region, which is a few miles per hour above average. That's not a major thing, but it is a bit on the windier side. Though some more local details are Bridget Mason noted from Wisconsin that all their major stations came in as the first or second windiest for the month of March. So there does seem to be more wind information. We just don't have a good wind climatology to be able to compare these overall. I just threw one bullet point in here about fires. The dry conditions have led to more fire danger, though everyone seemed to be agreed that the major, there had not been major fire issues at this point. There were a couple major winter storms that were quite damaging. One of these was the last part of March, a several-day event that dropped a lot of snow into northern Wisconsin and into the upper peninsula of Michigan. You can see the totals reported there. South of there in Wisconsin, and I believe a little bit in Minnesota, but definitely over in Michigan, a severe icing event. I believe there were reports up to 1 inch of ice collected on a wide range of things, as they do, electric lines, trees, that sort of thing. So there were widespread electric outages that lasted for, for a week or more. On the right-hand side, a picture of some tree damage. I did a little looking this morning, and timber is a big product in northern Michigan. There was extensive damage to trees and timber products because of that, and wood that would be harvested from that will lead to a large economic loss as part of this major event. On the offside, compared to the wetter east, we've had still major drought issues around our region. So here's the U.S. Drought Monitor released this morning. And you can see most of the eastern Corn Belt, a couple spots, a little bit up in Michigan and some other spots in Missouri, Illinois, but not too much in the way of drought issues. But once you get west of the Mississippi River, and especially out in the plains, we still have coverage on major drought issues. Lots of D1, D2, even some D3 from Wyoming, Nebraska, South Dakota, and up into North Dakota, where we just have not had enough precipitation to really improve that situation overall. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. You can see what we're dealing with. Some more of those details. So, more confined in the plains and some of the northern areas where we've had some precipitation, but just not enough to alleviate the drought situation. If we look at this across a time series for this whole region, the National Drought Mitigation Center does this half graphing capability where it gives you percentage of coverage of the various drought levels. And this goes all the way back to the start of the Drought Monitor in 2000. And you can see, except for a small period back in late 2024, since 2020, we've had fairly extensive coverage, drought coverage over this region compared to where we were in the period before that, all the way back to 2012, 2013. So we have had some more pervasive drought conditions that we have not been able to kick out of the region. Now let's go back to the other side, on the wet side. This is a photo from Salem, Illinois. One of a very common situation we saw with a prolonged rainfall event that occurred over the eastern region, kind of along the Ohio Valley, southern Illinois, southern Indiana. I didn't include the graphic. It was not a particularly heavy event on a short-term basis, but it was a multi-day event that when you accumulated over the multi-day event, it did, it was kind of on the return period of a 50-year, 100-year plus storm because of the long period heavy rainfall events. So where we are on a stream flow basis because of this, you can see that area still along the Ohio River Valley as we're still removing some of the rainfall from that heavy event from Ohio all the way down, and it's reached the Mississippi in this case. In contrast, as you get out in the plains, we have areas that are quite low from a stream flow standpoint, and scattered areas throughout the region where we have some lower stream flows overall. Probably still might have some ice affected issues up in Montana possibly. The other issue with some of the low flows further up into the plains and in the Minnesota-Wisconsin area was the lack of snow melt. You know, the overall lack of snow or early melting of what snow we did have. So stream flows are showing that effect of the lack of snow melt hitting through the region there. All right, here is a graphic going back to the Ohio Valley on some of the rainfall totals. These are CocoRa's plotting of 7-day totals, April 1 to April 7. And this is Kentucky right here. So you can see, you know, ranging from 8 to 10 to 14 inches of rainfall over that 7-day period. A lot of that concentrated in just the 3 days, April 1 to April 3. So widespread heavy rainfall events, which is why we saw the flooding in these areas, and you know, still some of the inundate conditions. We'll talk about that more as we go along. Now, while there was flooding, it has helped a soil moisture perspective, and let's go ahead and jump to that. You know, here's this couple of soil moisture maps, the NASA Sport list in the lower left-hand side, a CP, a Climate Prediction Center product in the upper right-hand side. Very wet conditions where we've had some of the heavier rainfalls, but in places like Ohio and parts of Indiana, the rainfall was actually beneficial. You know, Aaron Wilson from Ohio noted that it really did refill soil moisture profiles, and there really wasn't a lot of flooding because the first few inches of the rainfall were taken up by the soil and actually helped ponds and some issues that way. So while there was, you know, great negatives, there were some positives of some of the heavy rainfall events. But then you can contrast that then with some of the drought areas, some of the soil moisture you can see up in the northern plains, even in Iowa and Illinois. And that is kind of borne out by the USDA NASS topsoil moisture reports on short to very short. And you can see, you know, Wyoming to South Dakota to Nebraska, 72% reported short to very short. And that was some big increases even over the last week from some of the dryness. Whereas in the East, really no reports from a short to very short perspective. Going further west then, what we're looking at in the way of snowfall. This is from NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, the snow water equivalent up in the mountain areas. You know, this is a point where we still have snow in the mountains and starting to melt off. Generally okay, and you know, the green areas here are close to average. Some above average in parts of Montana, a bit lower as we get down here into Wyoming at this point. And then South Platte here is about 92%. So it's kind of a mixed in the upper Missouri Basin from the snowfall and an expected runoff standpoint. In the lower Platte River and the lower Missouri Basin, also kind of mixed overall. But while, you know, we have some decent snowpack in some of these areas, that is contrasted with some of the dryness that we're seeing out in these areas. We're going to talk about, and well, I guess that leads us to where we are right now. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers mountain snowpack for above Fort Peck and Fort Peck to Garrison. The red is the 30-year average. The blue is where we are in 24-25. That we were running not terrible, but a bit below average all the way through for both of these reaches. And you've seen we reached our peak and started to fall off in both of these a little bit earlier than the average peak overall. If you look at the North Platte and South Platte, the North Platte is also just slightly below average. It has not started to fall off yet completely. And the South Platte is hanging out near average. And that was borne out by Pete Goebel from Colorado, indicating that the water in the South Platte they're expecting to be okay for this year. Jumping back over to the Great Lakes, there's nothing major going on to talk about in the Great Lakes. Upper left-hand side, at the average ice cover, we're at about 3% here in the lower right-hand side. It actually peaked in February during that very cool period. It peaked above average overall, or it peaked above during that time period, but has then followed off with the overall warmer conditions. And then just a graph pointing out the core, or the was pointed out that the Michigan Huron system saw 172% of average precipitation during the month of March. So fairly heavy precipitation overall in that area. Now we've talked about precipitation, and counterpart of this is the evaporative demand, how much we're losing to the atmosphere. And looking over the last 3-month period, back from April 10th, because this graphic is delayed by a few days for processing, and these are in drought monitor kind of categories. In addition to some of the dryness, we've seen some increased evaporative demand or drying capability. So we're in some cases we're putting moisture on the soil, but it's being put back into the atmosphere. Now we haven't reached some of the peak times of this yet, but with warming temperatures, we are starting to get to that point. So this is also playing with this overall. Now, I didn't include this, but the last 30-day graphic was not quite as bad as this was. So the warm conditions have increased that evaporative demand earlier. And then kind of a general assessment of the overall water issues. I mentioned, where we were with stream flows on the Missouri River. Snowpack is a little below, but not too bad. But because of the overall dry conditions, the Army Corps of Engineers is expecting reduced navigation service due to the lower runoff. I didn't include the number, but I believe 85% was their number that was expected for this year, is their estimate. The upper Mississippi River, I mentioned, is running not high, so there's a very limited flood risk because we don't have that much snow melting off and haven't had too much rainfall overall. That's in contrast with the lower Mississippi River as you get down to the confluence with the Ohio, where you're getting flooding from the rains further south. So the river overall is not in too bad a shape, but there's a real contrast between those areas. Floods are receding in the Ohio Valley, but I'm going to show you a graphic here that does bring some more precipitation back into that area. So they're expecting some of those stream flows to come back up again. The flood was quite damaging in a number of areas. Again, we didn't dive into that too much, but I don't believe it set too many records. It was definitely significant flooding, but didn't set too many peak records overall. Areas of damage, and on the ag side, lots of inundated fields. This was a common mention that ag progress has been limited because there, and then some places with winter wheat was drowned out because of the standing water in that area. So that does bring us, as we get into the agricultural impacts, so let's touch on those. First off, where are we from a first leaf standpoint from the National Phenological Network? First leaf and their national bloom index. I can't remember what they use on this, but you can see that has reached, is reaching well into our area. And this does compare well with Trent Ford, who mentioned in Illinois. Tree fruits are at risk in southern Illinois if there were to be a freeze. And probably in much of this area. Now we're not expecting a freeze necessarily, but they are at a point where we could be at risk overall. From a soil temperature standpoint, soil temperatures are generally in the 50s in the southern part of our region. So good enough for people to get out and start doing field work. Northern areas still okay, or is okay for small grains, which can be planted at cooler temperatures. But corn and beans having to hold off a little bit until we get some warmer temperatures, and that's not unexpected for this time of year. Now the maps from USDA NASS are back and available again, have been rolling, so we'll touch on some of our overall crop conditions. Winter wheat conditions, poor to very poor. That area of dryness is having its impact on winter wheat conditions in South Dakota and Nebraska, where poor to very poor is at 40% right now. So really could use some rainfall to help that out. Other areas of the plains, not quite as bad. Eastern areas, there's been sufficient rainfall, really pretty good overall. From a percent headed standpoint, southern areas, we have had some percent headed already, but not too much overall. And then kind of a mash of other crops on where they are. Corn planting, this is as of last weekend, so it will have made quite a bit of progress already. Southern areas have seen some corn planting. Minnesota reporting 1% already as people get rolling. Oats, which can be planted earlier, pretty good progress over the region. Spring wheat in those northern areas, 27% in South Dakota. Again, appropriate time for that. And then soybeans, again, a few southern areas, and then 2% in Illinois, 1% in Iowa. There has been a switch over time towards more people planting soybeans ahead of corn. There's some differences of opinion about that, but it is something that we are seeing overall. Okay, kind of a wrap up of some ag and plant issues. Planting progress is kicking in. Conditions are generally okay. There have been some delays in that south and eastern areas, Ohio Valley area, because of the wetness has kept people out of the fields, and the drowned out winter wheat, which I had mentioned previously. Dry soils are still a concern in the plains. It's not too much of a problem for planting, but you need water available once you get planted and get it actively growing. So we're going to need more precipitation there. This is also a factor on pasture and rangeland, which are noted dry, and pastures and rangeland up in the area. People have noted a need for rainfall soon. Rangeland particularly, you need precipitation in that March, April, May, June time period. If you miss out, then you're going to miss out on productivity as we're going along. So really needing some precipitation to occur soon up in the plains area. Really not any significant livestock loss reports. There was a note from Eric Hunt in Nebraska that people were wanting to increase their herds because herd numbers were a bit low, but because of the lack of grass, they've not been able to increase them as much as they wanted to. And I mentioned the specialty crops potentially at risk further south if a freeze occurs. We're not expecting to see that at this point. Okay, where are we on the outlooks? Let's go ahead and dive into those. First of those, touching on where we are with La Niña, or should we say where we aren't with La Niña. I believe NOAA has officially declared the La Niña done, and we're into neutral conditions at this point. So that the gray bars indicating extremely high probability of staying in neutral conditions, basically through the summer. And then as we get on into later part of the year, there is actually neutral is still the way to go. There is a chance of La Niña resurging as the time we get to the latter part of the year, but that's still quite a ways out and beyond the predictive, where we're confident in the way of our predictions. So basically, we're predicting most things, and NOAA is predicting things based on, not including La Niña, El Nino into the equation at all, which opens things up a little bit more.
You want to say a little?
Yes,
do you want to say a little bit about the spring barrier? Oops, I think I beat.
Yes. Yeah, there is this thing called the spring barrier that is commonly noted by modelers.
Oops. Sorry about that, Dennis. I keep doing the wrong thing.
There are a number of things that happen in the atmosphere during the mid-late spring that make long-range predictions more difficult into the summertime. So we're getting to that period. Once we get past this, the models seem to come into play a little bit better to understand. Long-range modeling still has some difficulties with it, but yeah, we are at that predictive barrier. So our outlooks are a little less confident at this time of year. Okay, so jumping on here to the 7-day forecast precipitation. I alluded to this earlier. Model precipitation forecast, you see that same area down south, though maybe slightly shifted north, is expecting some pretty decent precipitation amounts. Oklahoma is not a focus of where we are here, but we're in the order of 5+ inches. Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and then a little bit lesser amounts as we get up to Indiana and Illinois. So not quite the same area, but some of the same areas will get some of the heavier rainfalls. I did mention one of the things that came from Missouri. Missouri was not mentioning too bad in the way of precipitation, except for the Boot Heel, where they were seeing some flooding and some problems in the Boot Heel area. In contrast, in the northern plains, where we noticed those dry conditions, not a whole lot expected to occur there. And then the major amounts further south are expected to occur over the next couple days, and then another fairly major, but not quite as big a one in the latter part of the 7-day period. So we'll have a couple different periods of precipitation over this. Then we jump to week 2, 8 to 14 day outlook, temperature on the left-hand side, precipitation on the right-hand side. pretty strong chance of being warmer than average. This is why we're noting not too much concern about freeze, particularly as we look to be on the warm side as we go into the latter part of April. And then, that area, again, further south has better chances for precipitation, but the whole region has somewhat elevated chances for precipitation, which is a good thing over most of the region. So it might slow down some of the ag activity further east, but further north, they'll welcome a little bit of slowdown and would not be slowed down too much by the additional precipitation. Okay, 30-day outlook, jumping into May. What do we have for May? And we don't have strong indications of a lot of things happening in May. The forecasters did discuss this the long-range outlooks. They discussed this, and the different indicators, models they were looking at were really all over the place. So that's why they didn't have a ton of confidence in this outlook. So some hints towards the warm side of the plains, but not really that strong. Eastern Corn Belt, equal chances. And then also some hints with a little better chance of being drier as you go further west. And then a little bit, and then leaning towards the wetter on the Ohio Valley again. But again, not strong on either one of these situations. Then the 90-day outlook for May, June, and July. So it gets us into the early part of the growing season. You see some hints towards the warm side. Now, because we don't have El Niño or La Niña, they're relying a lot on trend and relying a lot on what the computer models are saying. So northern areas, again, stay in the equal chances, hints towards warmer overall. And I honestly, the trend, interestingly, is more towards warmer minimum temperatures than warmer maximum temperatures. So we'll see how this plays out as the summer goes on. The bit more concerning one is this area of dryness into the plains area. This is persistent as we go on through the summer. The hints are not, the indications are not strong, but they are persistent and about drier conditions. So again, we're not calling for major problems, but it's something we're going to keep an eye on. When you combine this slightly increased chance of dryness along with the existing dry conditions, that's why we start cautioning people to look more seriously at the situation and start thinking about what they would do if dryness does continue. And then I did include usually just one more here, the summer outlook, the other part of summer outlook, July to September, and very similar outlook. The area of dryness does slide a little bit further to the east in this region. So this is something we should be watching, and we should continue, dealing with as we go along about, how much of development is this, and how serious a situation could this be. And when you combine those outlooks, this is the U.S. seasonal drought outlook. Nothing unexpected here, and this is for April to the end of July. A lot of things can happen during this time period, so don't take this as gospel. But you combine, existing drought conditions with, slight chances towards the drier side, persisting of drought, or maybe some development of drought is definitely in play there. Okay, last one, wildland fire potential. There is a little bit of elevated fire potential in April, but since we're, through much of April, I didn't throw that in, and in May, we're not showing any specific indications towards that. So, and that will ease as we get some precipitation, start getting some more green up. So, we talked about some of the wet conditions, south and east, and flooding, and then some drier conditions for the north and west, lower flows on the Missouri and some of the other rivers in that area. Spring planting and field activity is rolling. It has been slowed some by the wetness, along the Ohio Valley in that area. Several large spring events, severe weather, and winter weather events have affected the area. We also talked about some of the wind overall. So from an outlook standpoint, La Niña has weakened to neutral conditions. So we have to use other things as our guides for the long range outlooks. The near term does look more active from a precipitation standpoint in that 8 to 14 day time period, and further south and then in this first 7 days. So that can be good, but we're going to need to continue that precipitation, especially in the northern plains, to help us out here. Drier conditions are more possible in the northern western part of our area, that northern plains area to central plains, as the outlooks indicate, in the longer term. And so that drought risk is apparent, and something we will need to keep an eye on as we go along here. Okay, just a quick reminder of some of the websites and some of the people involved here. And let me jump one more slide here. Doug, do you want to mention the website down here at the bottom?
Yeah, sure. First of all, that's my personal email. After the April 30th, you can contact me there on that phone number as well. Feel free. Yeah, so one of the solutions to, one of the things that we're going to try to do is work with the National Integrated Drought Information System, who we work with all the time, to put this recording and PDF file on somewhere on the web. And if we do, it'll likely be at that site right there. We'll give you plenty of time to write that down if you really care to. It's a long, horrible thing. In fact, Dennis, why don't we copy it off of there and put it into the answer a question with it, so people could just click on that question thing. And okay. So you can probably, all right, you can copy it better.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and go on with the questions.
Yeah. So let's go back to the outlooks a little bit, and sorry, let's go back to the drought outlook. And there's good reason for all that yellow, which is increasing likelihood of drought across that area. Dennis showed the outlooks from for precipitation and temperature, and this is sort of following that, right? So if that comes true, this is very likely to happen, right? No substantial improvement in drought in the brown areas, and drought development likely in the yellow areas, right? And this is through the end of July. So by the end of July, this is the best guess at what we're looking at in terms of drought areas in drought. I don't know, Dennis, if you want to go back one slide and just talk about summer in general and how important spring rainfall is. I know people know this, but it's important to reiterate how important spring rainfall is, especially for the plains and sort of the drier areas.
Okay, let me add on one thing to what Doug said. Is what we could see happen, especially since we are looking a bit more active in the shorter term, and climatologically may not be too bad in some of this area, we might see some short-term relief and some improvement in some of those drought areas, just because we expect more precipitation in the springtime, and that can ease drought a little bit. But then as we get, again, as we get into what the outlooks are saying for May, June, July here, and then July, August, September, then we could see some resurgence of that drought, because it's combined, with lesser precipitation at a typically warmer time of year that could worsen the drought situation. And again, rangeland really needs that spring precipitation. Small grains need that spring precipitation to really get them rolling. So it's really important, and especially those driest areas, that we get some precipitation on the ground here soon.
Okay. Over to the questions. There are several questions about regional climate centers and where we can, wanting us to comment on that. We can't. So I would say contact your local. I'll throw the state climatologist under the bus a little bit in terms of contacting them and get their take on it. And that's probably all I can say about that at the moment. And then, yeah, like I said at the beginning, I'm officially not going to be at NOAA any longer as of May 1st. Okay, so that's okay. Well, it's not okay, but it's if you need to reach me, you can reach me on that email at the end of the slideshow there that I showed. Let's see. Just a comment about 2-inch ice accumulations across 1 million square acres. That comes out of Michigan. Person out of Michigan said that, and that power outages, thank you, Mary, for 5 to 7 days for some people in Nebraska. My aunt and uncle, for example, near Columbus, Nebraska, were out for several days and had to throw everything out of the freezer, among other things. And then rekindling of fires, older fires have happened. You know, if the fire goes deep, as they say, it becomes a zombie fire. That's what some people call them. And they rekindle, especially with high winds and the right conditions, they can start fire again. And we've seen some of those things happen on several in several states. There's a question about, I really like the snowpack ice cover graphs. I would like to know which ones you're talking about, Shane. So send me a private email and tell me, because your state climatologist or people who work for the state of Kansas or Kansas State University may have some of those available. And it'll just be talking to Matt Sattel, among others, in your state to get some of that. Okay. What is there a La Nada? Well, yes, it's not called that. We just call it neutral. That means there's nothing going on.
Some people colloquially do call it La Nada, though it's not officially called that.
Right. Yeah. Strictly a calendar date. Yeah. So spring barrier, of course, isn't a perfect thing. This question is about, is the spring barrier strictly a calendar date? No, it's strictly a springtime date or a springtime period. Basically from now through June. After that, we start trusting better what our models are telling us, and we have more information to go by. It's just almost like any forecast that we do. The closer we get to the fall or late summer and fall, the better we understand what's going on in the atmosphere. So that's what I'd say about the spring barrier. It's just a really difficult time to get a read on the larger scale El Niño, La Niña process. Looks like grazing season will be abbreviated this summer unless people leave cattle in pastures and overgraze those pastures, maybe haul in hay. Ponds are already 4 feet low in Kansas, so some of those may reach record lows and experience fish kills. Yep, and we're seeing that all the way up north, especially in the high plains. A lot of places are lacking. Boy, that's a good question. AI having an effect in forecast accuracy. To some degree, yes. The models have gotten better such that the numerical models and such, call it AI or call it what you will, but the accuracy has gotten better using that and having some human influence, because there's a lot of local stuff that people know that computers don't. Screenshot.
Doug, also, there are some modeling efforts that use AI to review the computer models to try to pick up things out of the computer models that maybe the humans don't see in them. So I don't know how much they have changed the accuracy, but there is work being done in that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of money to be made there as well. Okay. Someone wants a screenshot of that URL. Did you put it somewhere, Dennis?
Okay. It is, go to the first question, and I put it as an answer in the first question. You can find the link there.
Okay. Very first question. And you sent it to all, right?
It's sent to all, yes.
All right. Here's one for you, Dennis. Are delayed corn planting concerns due to the flooding?
There, at this point, no. I mean, there may be some delays in the Ohio Valley area, but that is a place that has a longer season length. So unless we get to, significantly longer delays, this is not a problem from a widespread perspective.
Is the Bermuda High in place? Comment, Dennis.
It's a good question. I have not looked at the Bermuda High here recently as to location.
So yeah, as in location, it's always there, right? It never really goes away, but it sure shifts east and west. And certain things bring it west and certain things push it east. And it has a direct relationship with how much moisture gets into comes off the Gulf of Mexico, where we get most of our rainfall and moisture in the north central part of the U.S. It definitely has a correlation with how much moisture, like I said, moisture and rainfall precipitation happen in our area of concern. I don't think I'm telling you anything. So that's from Virgil, and Dennis, you can call Virgil and tell him more if you want. Okay, just a comment that a very positive comment about how these are helping people in education. So thank you for that nice comment. And then more thanks, and gotta have data to run algorithms and AI. Amen. Gotta have data. True. And then other folks saying attaboy for everything else. So hey, thank you all. Like I said, I'll still be a part of these webinars going forward. That'll be the biggest part of what I do, I think, in terms of continuing climate services into the future. If you want to communicate with me, if you have needs or whatever that aren't being satisfied in any other way, I'll give it my best shot. I'll still have a few connections around, and I'll help you out. I will say your state climatologist is a great person to get to know, whoever he or she or they are. I think they do a bang-up job of answering a lot of local questions. And obviously they do a good job of doing these regional outlooks as well. Anything else, Dennis?
No, I think that's it. I mean, just to touch on the drought issue again, we're not here saying it's going to be bad drought this year. We're saying there is a setup that could be a problem. Let's keep an eye on it, and let's keep checking back in.
Right, and we'll be checking back in on May 15th with Justin Gleason, as Dennis said earlier. He's the state climatologist for Iowa. And so thanks, everybody. Have a great month.